Thank you for having me. I'm going to start today with a story. I started my company, Thoughtbot, in 2003. We're a web and mobile design and development services company. But to get the full picture of our history, you have to rewind back all the way to 1995. This is when I started doing freelance web design and development. 1995 was a great time to start doing web development. This is when most companies were creating their very first website. And it was the start of the dot-com boom. As someone just starting out, it was a lot different than it is today. Things were a lot simpler and easier to learn. And you could stay up to date as technology advances came out. And there was plenty of work to do because there just wasn't that many of us around. I decided to go to university for computer science in 1998. And that was the height of what would turn from the dot-com boom into the dot-com bubble. I went into university, therefore, thinking that I was going to graduate with an incredible job at some amazing new tech startup. But I continued to do freelancing throughout to make sure that I could make ends meet throughout university. By 2001, however, the dot-com bubble had burst. The September 11th attacks fundamentally changed the US economy. And me, like a lot of people graduating at that time, had trouble finding work. So I fell back on the freelancing work that I had been doing throughout, until I could find something more permanent. It was while doing this freelancing work that one of my clients told me he knew someone who was working on something new that they needed a programmer for. So I went and met with him, and he said that he was working on a healthcare and medical industry startup, which is an area that I care a lot about. And so after meeting and learning about it, I joined as the first technical hire of a new medical billing software company. I needed to build a team of people, and so I hired 4 friends that I graduated from computer science from university. And we got started. Unfortunately, things with that company's funding situation weren't quite what they appeared to be. And after about 6 months, we stopped getting paid. And after that, things fell apart pretty quickly. I once again found myself in a situation of needing to find work. But this time, something was different. I had a group of friends that I enjoyed working with. So I went to them and I asked them, if I could find enough work to support all of us, would you want to keep on working together? They said yes. We started to brainstorm names, and Thoughtbot was born. What happened next was I picked up the phone and I contacted past clients and contacts, and I let them know what I was doing. They didn't necessarily need a new website or software built, but they liked me and they wanted to be helpful. So I got a lot of, well, you're a computer guy, right? Can you set us up with a new computer? Can you install a new network in our office? Can you help us with this weird problem we're having with Microsoft Word? We were just starting out. I had an obligation to my friends to support us all. I felt in that situation that I needed to say yes to every bit of work that I could get. But once this started happening, we tried to put a nice name on it. We said, okay, we're going to be a full-service IT consulting company for small and medium-sized businesses. But we just weren't successful in my two most important metrics for success: financial success and being happy and fulfilled in the work that we were doing. But this felt counterintuitive to me because I was saying yes to every bit of work that I could get. Why wasn't I more successful? I didn't understand it at the time. In fact, it took us nearly 2 years, nearly going out of business, and needing to make big changes to the way that we worked and the work that we did. But in hindsight, I now understand. And that's what I've come here to share with all of you today. It is, when you try to be everything to everyone, you accomplish being nothing to anyone. I'm Chad Pytel. I'm a designer and developer and the founder and CEO of Thoughtbot. We're a web and mobile design and development agency. Next year, we'll celebrate our 20th year in business. We're now about 100 people spread throughout Americas, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And as consultants, we work with people in similar time zones to ourselves. Today, I'm going to talk about how to differentiate yourself in a crowded market. And you've probably gathered from my introduction that you don't do it by being everything to everybody. I clearly didn't start Thoughtbot with this understanding. I came to learn it over time, often through failure. I hope that by sharing my story with you today, that I can help you skip over that failure part. So in 2005, after 2 years of being in business, something happened that completely changed the course of Thoughtbot. 3 of the original 5 founders, after struggling to be successful for 2 years, decided it was time to go and get regular jobs. The remaining founder and I, we were forced with a decision. We didn't have a lot of success, customers, or obligations. We could just stop. But we didn't do that. We decided to stick with it. And that decision put us on a completely different mindset. Our friends had just shown us that we could walk away. They showed us that we had nothing to lose. We decided that this whole thing wasn't worth doing if we weren't happy and fulfilled in our work. If we didn't enjoy the work that we were doing, the ways that we were doing it, and if we weren't working more sustainably. And our friends had just shown us, they had given us a great gift. They showed us we could just walk away. We were 2 individual founders, pretty young, without a lot of obligations, and now we were making one last effort to make it work. We had nothing to lose, and we actually started to act like it. This was the important turning point for Thoughtbot. I remember it to this day. We literally took out a yellow lined sheet of paper, and on the left side, we wrote down all the things we believed in and wanted to do, and on the right side, we wrote down all the things we didn't believe in and no longer wanted to do. We added a new word to our vocabulary. Up until that point, everything had been yes. You need a new website? Yes. You need a new computer setup? Sounds good. You need a new network? Yes, new client. You don't want to write tests? Okay, we can make that work. Now we were willing to say no. No to the things we didn't believe in. No to the things we didn't want to do. And if we were going to go out of business doing that, then at least we were doing it in control over our decisions instead of just letting things happen to us. What was on that left side of the paper seemed really risky at the time. But that risk is exactly why this works. Let me share with you specific examples of what I mean. In 2005, the practice of test-driven development wasn't yet well established. It wasn't highly regarded. In fact, there were definitely people out there who actively disagreed with the concept of test-driven development. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still out there today, but it was even more so back then. I remember reading blog posts from founders and CEOs and CTOs saying, "We tried this at my company and it was terrible. We failed because of test-driven development. It was too slow, too rigid. It was busy work." Yet we were doing test-driven development and some projects when we could, and it was clear to us that it led to better products that were more stable, easier to change, and we were happier when we worked on them. Yet, up until that point, if a client didn't want us to do test-driven development, we didn't do it. With this change, we decided that we would practice 100% test-driven development and only work with clients who were okay with that. That felt really risky. At the time, there were certainly more potential clients out there that either didn't want us to do test-driven development or just didn't care. It feels risky, but here's why it works. Yes, there are lots of potential clients out there. But who is a client that wants to do test-driven development going to work with? A client that wants test-driven development is never going to work with a company who doesn't do it. By clearly establishing that this is what we did, which allowed us to focus our energy and get really good at it, the clients who wanted that were actually able to find us, and when they found us, choose to work with us, and then they got what they wanted. Here's the second example. Back then, we often worked the way a lot of companies do. You have visual designers who make a mock-up of a screen, and then a separate person implements that design. This handoff slows things down, and you often end up with inflexible products that need to change, but in order to change them, you need to go all the way back to the original designer or to the mock-up stage, make some changes, and then go back to the code to make it happen. But we had some designers on our team that were different. They were great user experience and visual graphic designers, but they also knew how to implement their own designs using HTML and CSS themselves. It was so clear to us at the time that this way of working was better, so we committed to that approach. As a result, our product teams are smaller and more cost-effective, and the products that were outcomes were even better. But sometimes living to your convictions is certainly not easy. Hiring these kinds of designers is incredibly difficult, even more so back then. At one point, we went nearly 2 years without adding a single new designer to our team because we just couldn't find someone who was able to do this up to our standards. Sometimes living up to your beliefs, it's not easy, but it's important. Compromising on your beliefs erodes the clarity of who you are and what you believe. At the end of the day, we would rather be a little bit smaller and be truly happy and fulfilled in our work because we know that over the long term, the clarity of beliefs and positioning in the market makes us more successful, not less. In 2005, we had started to use Ruby on Rails. At the time, it hadn't yet hit 1.0. It may not be obvious in today's landscape why Rails was so good at the time. But Rails was the first web development framework that was created after what was then called Web 2.0. This meant that before that, to build the kinds of websites that customers expected, you need to write lots of lines of code. But Rails had distilled it down to just a couple of lines to be able to create that rich Ajax dynamic experience that was being expected in products. It also had a great object relational mapping tool, and the notion of convention over configuration was so much better than what existed at the time. And finally, it also had testing frameworks built in. It was so clear to us that Rails allowed us to build the kinds of products that we loved to use better and faster. Rails hit 1.0 in the fall of 2005, and we decided that we would use it going forward. Again, at the time, this felt really, really risky. But what happened next for us was that Rails grew in popularity really quickly, and now we were one of the most experienced Rails development companies in the entire world. When this happens to you, you say like, man, we sure got lucky. Then the official Ruby on Rails website added a top-level navigation link called Consulting. And when you clicked on it, you got to a page with 3 companies on it. And we were one of those 3 companies. When things like that start happening, you certainly feel like you're getting lucky. But when you're clear about who you are and what you believe and what you do, you put yourself in that position to be lucky. The Rails website was never, ever going to put a company up on that consulting page that sort of did Rails. Throughout our company history, I've learned time and time again that saying no leads to success. I've also learned it feels really difficult and counterintuitive to actually do that, because it feels like you're shutting off potential opportunities from huge portions of the total addressable market. But the total addressable market was never going to work with you anyway. The more clear you are about what you do, why you do it, and what you believe, the easier it will be for the people who want what you have and believe what you believe to find you. This whole thing doesn't just apply to customers. The same is true for every aspect of our companies. When we established ourselves as one of, if not the leading Rails development company, there were only a handful of other companies out there that developers who wanted to work in Rails could actually do it at. We were on that short list. When the designer who knows how to implement their own designs is tired of handing them off to someone who only slows things down and ends up messing up their design, they go find another company to work at where they can practice their craft in the way that they want to practice their craft. When we narrow our focus, we're able to become really good at it. And we're able to create open source around the work and blog about our work in a way that would be much more difficult if we spread ourselves thin across so many different topics and technologies. And that focus causes those valuable open source projects and blog posts to be found by the people in our community, who then become our fans. And those fans eventually have a conversation with someone looking for design or development, or want to work at a company that does it in the way that we do, or they meet someone who needs help, and they jump at the chance to recommend you who they believe in. So this creates a self-fulfilling cycle of success. It's the reason why I'm here today speaking with all of you. So it's one thing to have the best practices in the world. It's also essential to know that to make the world know that you have them. What are our most successful ways of doing this? The first is our blog. It's read by over about 2 million people a year, developers and designers. It's not a day or a week or a month that goes by where I personally or someone else on the Thoughtbot team is working on a problem and we Google it. And who do we see at the top of that page? It's one of our blog posts. Developers and designers at companies across the world are doing the same thing. Clients are doing the same thing. And they're finding us and they're saying, these people know what they're doing. Open source. I already alluded, by focusing our energy on just a few things, we're also able to see the patterns in those things in a way that we just wouldn't be able to do if we were looking across many, many different things. And when we see those patterns, we're able to create open source. And because our clients are still using Rails, we're then able to use that open source, which makes it even better. The majority of Rails applications have at least one. The majority of Rails applications in all of the world have at least one of our open source packages installed in them. Sometimes when we're looking at those patterns, we say, hey, we have an idea for what we could do here, but this makes sense as a SaaS product, or a product that we sell, or a book that we publish and self-produce. And when we create a product like that, we have a set of fans who are there to receive it. It demonstrates the reputation that we want to build as people spread that product far and wide. And it demonstrates to our potential clients, wow, when they're really able to produce something, here's the quality of what they're able to produce in a real live product that they're able to pay for and use. And sometimes they even look at the footer and they say, who made this product? Oh, Thoughtbot, what do they do? And our final one is our playbook. So this is a living document that we publish on the web, and it includes details about everything that we do as a company. The way that we do design, the way that we do development, the way that we deploy applications, The way that we run our company, the vendors we use, the way that we organize, the way that our career ladder works, our salary bands are now public. We publish everything about how we work. I often get the question when I talk about this, aren't you afraid that people are going to steal how you work? I didn't come up with this metaphor, but I really like it. What do celebrity chefs that everybody knows about, do? They publish cookbooks. It's not the recipe that makes them famous. It's the execution. It helps build their reputation. It doesn't harm it. And when someone somewhere tries to copy everything that we do, and they're talking to their client and they say, why should we work with you? And they say, because we're the Thoughtbot of Portugal, which is a real thing that happened to me. Well, who do you think that client is going to go talk to next? I also often get asked, how can you afford to do this? I love this question because the answer to it uncovers a fundamental truth about our business that so many people who run consulting companies simply don't understand. What do we actually sell? We're a web and mobile design and development company. But what we sell isn't the code that we write or the designs that we produce. It isn't really even the finished product that we create for our customers. What we actually sell is three things: our people, our process, and our tools. Who we are and how we do it. So, in that sense, we actually are a product company. And in the same way that a company produces a software or a hardware product, they can afford to invest in making that product better. And they can't not afford to invest in making that product better. The same is true for our businesses. We can afford to invest in making our people, our process, and our tools better because that is the product we are selling. And the better we make it, the more successful we will be. In fact, we have something that makes us very fortunate over traditional hardware and software companies. And that is, in those companies, the product is different than the people who build the product. So what we see happen in those companies is that the needs of the company and the needs of the product inevitably diverge from the needs of the team working on the product. While a traditional product company understands and is motivated by investments in making their product better, many times investing in the team, learning new things, getting better and faster at what that team does, and definitely sharing back out, that gets deprioritized. But in our business, the needs of the product and the needs of the people working on the product, they're the same. When we learn new things and we get better and faster at what we do, and we share that back out, we are investing in our product. That is how we afford to do this. So the truth is that many of the things that originally defined Thoughtbot, they were technical tools or practices we believed in and that we followed that made us stand out over time. But also over time, those things become more commonplace in the market, particularly if we're very successful, then we lead the way and everyone starts doing what we're doing. So it's really important that while at the same time you stick to what you believe in, it's also really important that you change and evolve over time. The key is to do this authentically, choosing things that you really, really believe in, rather than trying to chase the next most popular thing. For us, and it won't be the same for every company, but for us, that was initially moving up the stack from design and development implementation-focused items to being very clear about what we believed about the right way to bring new products to market, to build new products, design new products, and bring them to market. So what we did was we layered on a robust practice of design thinking and design sprints into our work, and we made sure that we believed in it, knew how to practice it really well, and shared out that we were practicing those things. We added them all to the playbook. We blogged about them. We spoke at conferences. We produced open source. And most recently, for us, this has been peeling back those layers on our design and development practices and identifying the underlying values that caused us to choose those practices in the first place. At each step up the way, we've moved up the stack from design and development implementation to product and business creation to how companies themselves are run, their values and their purpose. It just so happens that this has matched the overall trend and growing understanding in the world about the power of purpose-driven companies. So traditionally, businesses are thought to exist to provide just a product or a service. But a growing number of consumers and entrepreneurs and enterprises are embracing the idea that companies can be more than that. Purpose-driven companies go beyond their role of offering a product or a service and start to focus on the impact, the positive impact that they want to have on the world. This brings more meaning to what businesses do, but it also creates an environment where you automatically do everything that I've been talking about today, where you are super clear about who you are, what you do, why you do it, and what you believe. So yet again, we were very early and clear in our belief, and it matched the movements and success of the overall market. So let's talk more about purpose-built companies. The reason businesses need a purpose, it has multiple benefits. It benefits not only the business, but also the customers and the team. So PwC did a survey, and what they learned in that survey was a few things. The first was that 79% of business leaders say that purpose can be central to success, that it's a key element for differentiation. Hey, that sounds familiar. That's in my talk title. And that it ultimately allows companies to have a transformative effect instead of only achieving linear growth. The results also show that belief and belonging, they're important for employee satisfaction. Purpose-driven companies are good at creating a sense of community and attracting top talent. The results also show that customers see that their purchase makes a difference, and they get more satisfaction from choosing a brand with meaning. This research backs up exactly what I said before. The more clear you are about what you do and why you do it and what you believe, the easier it will be for the people who want what you have and believe what you believe to find you. And when they find you, they understand what you do, and they're more likely to want to work with you. For Thoughtbot, improving the way people work is now part of our purpose. We know we're achieving this when customers who choose to work with us say something like this: I chose to work with Thoughtbot because I want what you have for my company. I hope that what I shared with you today is helpful. If you take those risks and are willing to say no, if you have conviction to work like you have nothing to lose, and you share it with the world so that they understand who you are, I am confident you'll hear this from your customers. I want what you have for my company. Thank you very much.